No one knows what it means, but it's provocative. Gets the people going.
Dzisiaj nietypowo, bo mamy gościa z zagranicy, więc będzie odcinek po angielsku, więc od teraz zaczynamy po angielsku. Cyk. Neil Young. Hello.
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 Dzień dobry.
Hello.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Hello.
We also dzień dobry.
Okay, Neil. Maybe for our public, please describe yourself in few sentences. Who are you?
Who am I? The eternal question. Well, I am from Britain originally. I'm living in Vienna, and I work as a film festival programmer and consultant, and I also work as a film critic. And I kind of divide my professional life between those two things and try to get paid as much as I can from each one. And sometimes each year it's more writing, and sometimes it's more with festivals. But I generally try to make a balance between the two, which involves going to as many film festivals as possible.
Oh, exactly. So how many festivals on average before Corona it was?
It was averaging somewhere between 24 and 28 in a year, something like that. But that means going for at least 2 or 3 nights, because obviously you can go for one night to 365 festivals. But to go properly and see a few films and really experience the festival, I think you've got to be there for 2 or 3 days. So on that basis, between 25 and 1 year, I did get to 30, which I think is
30.
Maybe a world record.
Okay, so for instance now, as we are at New Horizons Festival in
Yes.
the Festival Club and in Arsenal, you are counting that festival as one on your list for that year?
I am, yes. So this is lucky number 13 of festivals this year, which is already more than last year. Last year I think I topped it at 12, and obviously last year with Corona issues, it was again an unusual year. The year before that was only 8, which is terrible. And but I still managed to get to 8 festivals even in the middle of a pandemic. So I think I did okay.
And
But
I
yeah,
and I
this is number
think you will
13.
be here again for a while this year, I suppose, for
Yes.
American.
I could well be back in later in the year. I did come to that festival once before, 2014, and I think this is my 6th visit to New Horizons, the first time being 12 years ago in 2010.
Okie dokie. So from our perspective, you are that guy. Okay, you are firstly my friend, and the other face you got for me is like the Neil who travels a lot at movie festivals throughout the whole world. And you've got the experience from different flavors of festivals, like in the far away Mexico City, not so far away Sarajevo, or for instance Wrocław. So in a nutshell, what's your experience of going from time to time, as you do it, to Poland for Polish festivals? Because it's not only, of course, New Horizons and American, because it's more than that.
Yes, I have been to the Warsaw Film Festival once. It was the year when Andrzej Wajda died in the middle of the festival, which is very memorable for me. And they put a photograph of him outside the screening rooms in the palace. I was also at Gdynia once. That's where I saw Ida. So I remember that one. If I only go to a festival once, it's very easy for me to remember what happened to that festival. Like this festival, I'm like, which year was it? I was in Bydgoszcz for Camera Image. I was on a jury there, and the Camera Image is a cinematography festival, and it's been in many different cities. It's now in Torun. Back in Torun. And so yeah, I do have some experience of film festivals in Poland. And one thing is that the hospitality is always very good, and you always get looked after very well, especially if you're on a jury or if you're attending as press. And you get sort of old-fashioned welcome and old-fashioned good hospitality. And I always recommend to people to go to Poland if they want to be looked after very well. And I was also in Łódź at Transatlantic Festival, which is also a festival that's moved around. In fact, all Polish film festivals move around apart from Warsaw, because New Horizons used to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a thing that they are unusually mobile for whatever historical reason.
But basically, New Horizons is pretty solid, immobilized.
But in the early days, it was in other places.
Of course, but the last more than 10 editions are in Wrocław.
Yes, and now Wrocław has become a bit of a film festival city, with obviously the American Film Festival is well established, and then there's a Korean one, and it seems as though
considering New Horizons as the biggest Polish movie festival, apart from Gdynia, but Gdynia is only for domestic movies, and it isn't like 300 movies; it's more like 30. So considering New Horizons and American, like the biggest festival of American cinema, both in the same city, it makes Wrocław the biggest on the Polish map of whole movie festivals.
Well, yes, it's certainly the ones that most international people would know about now. I mean, obviously, Warsaw Film Festival has been established, I think, longer and has a history. But I think certainly when I talk to people about festivals in Poland that they've been to, Wrocław seems to be the one that is particularly mentioned, partly because of the is it called Polish Days, where they show show the new Polish films, and so sometimes press or industry will come mainly for that, and then obviously like New Horizons shows lots of films which have been in Cannes and Berlin and Venice and the big festivals in other countries. But when industry and press are coming here, like me as a press person, I'm not going to come and write about Triangle of Sadness because I write for Screen International and we covered that in Cannes. So what I'm always looking for, I'm not actually here as a journalist this time, but if I was here, I'd be looking at the Polish at the world premieres and the very new films to see what's the freshest stuff to write about.
Okay.
Considering the number of movies at the film festivals throughout the world, how is New Horizons? Because this year is 271 movies. And for example, how is it in Cannes? Because we always hear about like 30, 40. I think there's a lot more, but how is it?
Yeah, I think the total number in Cannes is probably smaller because you have the competition, you have Uncertain Regard, Cannes, Critics Week. There aren't like gigantic numbers of films that show at Cannes, and New Horizons is in some ways a digest of what has been shown at Cannes, Berlin, Venice. Along with some newer films, but the main focus is on bringing those films to Wrocław so that the audiences here can see these films ahead. But also, what New Horizons does is put them in some sort of historical context because, for instance, later today I'm going to see a film by Jonas Mekas, the very important Lithuanian-American filmmaker. There's a retrospective of Agnieszka Holland. And there are many sidebars and sections in this festival, and always have been. So yes, of course, you can concentrate on only seeing the big new films in screen one of the cinema. But I think if you do that, you're really missing out on the variety and the depth of cinema. Because if you just concentrate what plays in Cannes, Berlin, and Venice, that's not necessarily to say they're the best films. In fact, normally when I look at my kind of top tens of the year, it's unusual for films to have come from those festivals. Maybe I just have a different taste from the people who are programming them. I hope so.
Yeah, maybe because you see a lot of movies and you see them differently. But the Cannes is the movies that are shown there. It has to be world premieres, or
pretty much. Yeah, I mean there are many different sections in Cannes. There's a section called Acide, which does show some films which aren't world premieres. And for instance, if let's say Almodovar has a new film, often it will have shown in Spain before it plays in the competition in Cannes. That's unusual, and if you have to be a really big name for that to happen, because normally Cannes will insist on a film is a world premiere there. But I think it's important to make a distinction because Cannes in many ways is not actually a film festival. Cannes is basically and primarily a trade event because you can't go and buy a ticket and go and see Triangle of Sadness in Cannes as a member of the public. They only have what are basically private screenings for press and industry. The only section you can buy tickets for, really, the only big section is Cannes, the Director's Fortnight, for which you can go and buy a ticket. But the other ones, as I say, Cannes is really a trade fair that is called a film festival. But like Berlin, Venice, Toronto, I mean, all of the big festivals, New Horizons likewise, you can go and buy a ticket, and maybe it sells out. But there's a possibility of buying a ticket, and you can't buy a ticket for a competition film in Cannes.
Okay, so it's only like for distributors to
and press.
See
well, it's for industry, it's for press, it's for people in the business primarily. That's
business,
what it's all
right?
about. Yeah,
it's for the business.
So to see any film in the competition in Cannes, you need to have an accreditation, and you can't buy it. You have to have either be industry or actually you do have to pay for it, but you can't just say, "Oh, I want to buy this." You have to be in the industry to get an accreditation.
Okay.
And of course, in Cannes, you have I think 7 or 8 different grades of that. So even if you have an accreditation, maybe you don't see any films because people are ahead of you in the queue.
Hello,
So,
France.
Well, this is the way they've been doing it for a long time, and I'm sure they will continue to do it until the end of cinema.
And they are known for its reservation system? Like
Well, this is a new thing in the last couple of years. I haven't been to Cannes since 2013, and when I went the first time, I had the second highest badge, which meant I could just walk into anything. And the second year that I went there, I had the next badge, which meant I had to wait a little bit, but I would always get in. So I was like, oh, I'm going down the list here. Maybe I should, I don't want to be at the bottom of the list. So now there are many reasons. I did it twice and it was fine. It was a good experience. I was on a jury on the second year. I was on the Semaine de la Critique, the Critics Week's jury, and, I had a nice time. But Cannes is not a festival that I'm desperate to get back to be honest. And
So what's the one you desperately want to get back to?
New Horizons, of course. Well, one of my favorite festivals is San Sebastian in Spain, and that is a festival that does have a lot of premieres, but it also, again, has a digest of the big films. Like, if I want to see Triangle of Sadness or Albert Serra's Pacifiction or something, you have many chances of seeing those films through the year. And, okay, if Screen International, who I'm reviewing for, wants me to go to Cannes and review those films, I'll do it. But sometimes it's better to wait even until they come out in general release and you see them without this festival hype that can gather around a film. So quite often I will see these films. I saw Parallel Mothers Almodovar just a few months ago. So to me, I'm not like burning with this desire I've got to be the first person to see it. Maybe that was what I was like when I first started going to festivals 20 years ago. But now I'm getting to the stage where I find a lot of the more interesting films are short, experimental films, historical films, and there's only so many hours in a day. And I kind of realized that sometimes it's better to chill out a bit and not be running around trying to be the first person to see everything.
Okay. And from the perspective of, for instance, from perspective of organizers of that kind of events, what can you say, like, a good advice, considering you've been to so many festivals and you've got your observations, experiences, what can you recommend, for instance, for New Horizons, as a starter pack of a few ideas to add up in the next years? Maybe it could be like some technical issue, it could be like some idea for some screenings in the city, like the best of things that could be implemented here in the next years of American or New Horizons.
Well, this is the first time I've been at this festival for 7 years, and I've seen one film, which I just came out of, and in many ways it's very similar to what it was like when I was here 7 years ago. There's still this fun ticket system where you have to be ready at 8:30 and press the button which is very exciting. I was saying to somebody, sometimes the most exciting thing is getting the tickets, because there's this adrenaline rush at 8:30. You have to press the button, otherwise you don't get it. So
Like casino.
Exactly, it's a thrilling gamble that you're playing with. So I'm wary of giving too much advice, but looking through the program, as I say, what I find interesting are often the more, what you sometimes call more marginal films, short films, and experimental films. And I think New Horizons' emphasis has traditionally always been on the bigger fictional films, the big films from the big festivals. And I think that is great, and it services the audience wonderfully. But whenever I see a festival that really makes an effort not to make those things marginalized and sort of encourages the audience to take a few risks and see things that they might not have seen. For instance, you can show, let's say, a very short... I used to program a film festival in Bradford, and I would quite often, if we had a big new film, I would deliberately put on a very short experimental film beforehand. 1, 2, 3 minutes. People watch anything for 3 or 4 minutes. If you get it 5 or 6 minutes of blobs and scratches and people screaming, that can be a problem. But I found that was a good way of... So every film at Bradford had a short film that went in front of it. And sometimes it would be an old film, sometimes it would be a new film, an experimental film. And that was a way of sort of saying to the audience, don't be afraid of these other genres. Okay, you come in to see a Pierce Brosnan film about a hairdresser, but here is a weird Austrian experimental thing that maybe you'll be horrified by, but maybe it will encourage you to try new things. Remember we showed Universal Soldier, one of the Universal Soldier films. I think it was Regeneration. And before that, we put Apichatpong Verasetakund's trailer that he made for the Biennale, which is 1 minute. It's only a 1 minute film. And again, audiences like, oh, what's this? And there was David Lynch did another one. We showed that before. Again, a sort of more mainstream film. So I would, if I could make a humble suggestion to a very successful festival that's been going for a very long time, I would say try that and try to surprise your audience by pulling them out of... Okay, they bought the ticket, they know what they're going to see. They'll sit for 2 minutes and watch something that may, or maybe an animation, or maybe, or as I say, maybe a classic film from the old days. Poland has a huge history of amazing short and animated films.
Yeah, the short films are marginalized. Normally.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, in Poland, New Horizons did that before Oscars. Each year they make like sections with all the short films combined, and you go for like an hour and a half to watch like 15 or 10 movies.
Yeah. I mean, I work for shorts festivals. 2 of the festivals I program for are shorts festivals. That's all they show. And so you program an hour or 70 minutes, and you have an audience who will sit for 70 minutes and watch shorts.
So it's a 2-hour festival.
No, you can get, when you have shorts marathons where you can sit for 6 hours and watch the whole festival. But as I say, to me, you have shorts festivals and you have kind of longs. We never call them longs, but that's what they are. You know, if you're a shorts, there are longs. And to me, I think cinema is one big continuum. And if you look at most of the big directors, I mean, look at Almodovar, Guadagnino, several of Lanthimos, a lot of them in the last couple of years have made shorts, which have been really highly talked about. You know, so it's not like some scary thing, I never watch short films. And as I say, I think there are ways that imaginative festivals can just think a bit outside the box. And just because something has always worked, that doesn't mean you should just keep doing it until the end of time, because all festivals, I think, need to evolve. And they need to help their, gradually the audience of a festival grows and evolves, and you can start to sort of move it in different ways. Like at Bradford, we started showing films of James Benning, who's been on a jury here, an American experimental filmmaker who makes landscape films. The first screening we had of a James Benning film, we had 6 people there, you know, and they all stayed at the end, and they all talked. And a few years later, we were able to do a James Benning section and bring James Benning there, and he was greeted like a rock star. Because, you know, by that point, we built up a following for James Benning's films. It's quite hard because they're kind of tough films. They're not easily accessible films. But if you find a way to do it, if you find a way to introduce those films, to stand in front of an audience and say, this is why we think you should watch this. Or a little trick is to put the film at the end of the festival, if it's difficult, and say, something very special is coming at the end. Ooh, we've got something for you. Make sure you don't miss out this on the last days. And if you kind of keep selling it and promoting it correctly, not mis-selling it and not mispromoting it, you've got to be honest, you will find audiences are more willing to take risks than you would have thought, and they don't just want to see the same old directors. Because after a while, you know, if you keep seeing the same names over and over again, because there's more to art cinema than Lars von Trier and Almodovar and Östlund. You know, there's many different parts of the world, many different kinds of films that don't get a look in because there's this perception that audiences don't want to watch that.
It reminds me of what Steve Jobs said once, that if you're not showing something to people, they don't know that they want it, because they don't ever knew that this is existing. So I think this thing that showing short movies before the movie, for the long movie, is very clever and very good, because nobody would probably walk out of this.
No, I mean, as I say, anything, if it's less than 5 minutes, and there's loads of great films less than 5 minutes, what we used to get complaints about is if we put a 25-minute short before the feature, and people are like, what time? We don't want to sit watching this. We want to see the thing that we bought the ticket for. So again, you have to be very careful how you do it. And I'm not saying don't show 25-minute films, but maybe in a different program, and not as a prelude. And also, especially not if it's a 2.5-hour film. You know, like Albert Serra's film Tomorrow is like 2.5 hours. And if you put like a half-hour short before that, people are going to be, you know, falling asleep and going to the toilet.
So you are on this clever curation side of power now, like with these little adjustments to, you know, to guide a viewer a bit, you know, because when somebody bought a ticket for the whole festival or for the movie, it's like ingrained in it. It's supposed to be, I suppose, that it's like some curation, that you trust the festival, that you go with the flow, and there are some surprises along the way.
Yeah, because a film festival should not be, here's a bunch of films. You know, you just trust the audience to find it and things like that. There should be some element of thought that goes into what gets shown, how it gets written about, how it's described on the website in the catalogue, how you promote it at the festival. You know, I always say every film should be introduced. Every film at a festival there should be somebody there, even if there's no guest. There should be somebody there saying, today you're going to see Peter von Kant by the great Francois Ozon. We hope you really enjoyed a great film that was in Berlin. And if you like this, you look beforehand and you see which films aren't selling so well. And you say, on Friday, if you like this, you'll love that. And you've got a captive audience there. And if somebody stands there with genuine enthusiasm...
So kind of guide.
Yeah,
guide
and
through the festival.
Yeah, and a festival like New Horizons will have a lot of programmers. Not everybody will love every film, so you wouldn't get somebody who was lukewarm. You'd say, "Who really likes this? Oh, do you want to introduce it?" But again, it puts a face to the festival, and rather than a film just coming on, that is something that I would. I mean, I was just at that film there. Nobody introduced it, but I think if I was in charge of a festival, one of the first things I would do is every film has to be introduced, because that means if the person likes the film, they come in. It happens all the time. They come and see you. You introduced that film. Oh, it was so good. Yeah, tell me more. Or they didn't like it, in which they, what the hell were you doing showing this? I wasted my time and money. I took my girlfriend. Oh, we hated it. So it makes the festival an interaction between people.
More like a journey.
Yeah, because otherwise, what makes a film festival different from watching films in your house? Because, most people now have amazing beamers and screens and they can have a great experience. But what they're doing, what are they looking? Algorithms, streaming, things like that. And you don't have that human thing of like, we are a bunch of people who all love films. We have selected these films for you. We are here with you in the room. If I'm introducing a film, I think, well, I'll watch it, and you sit down and watch it, and the audience goes, oh, he's watching it. Oh, because they expect you to just go off and do something else. So as I say, that is one little thing that I would always suggest to all festivals, not just New Horizons. And people say, oh, we haven't got the staff, we haven't got the thing. These festivals employ a lot of people, and it only takes 5 minutes to introduce the film. And in terms of the promotional value of those 5 minutes, as I say, you've got a captive audience. You put a poster in the bakery across the street there. Somebody's buying a bun. Maybe they're going to watch a film. Maybe they're not. But if you've got a bunch of people sitting in a cinema ready to watch a film, chances are they'll be interested to hear about something else that's coming.
Sure, yeah.
And as I say, that obviously you don't do that for a film that's sold out. And it is a good idea to keep an eye on what needs a bit of help in terms of, why aren't people buying tickets to my favorite film? And then you sort of identify those and sort of concentrate on those. And because, you want people to go and see everything. You don't want screenings with 10 people in them or 5 people in them. You want the room to be reasonably full, to create that festival buzz and hopefully create word of mouth. And that's how successful festivals connect with their audiences. And as I say, the last thing you want to be is just like, oh, here's a bunch of films.
So more guidance, like tour guides on the journeys, like, you've got somebody who tells you a little bit more.
Yeah,
as
an
appetizer.
At Bradford, the festival I work for in Britain, sometimes I would do introductions, and somebody in the audience would say, "Don't tell us the plot. We don't want to know about the plot." And I was like, "I'm not going to tell you the plot. I'm just going to say to you, this film premiered here. The director is maybe it's a director you've heard of, maybe it's not, but somebody that spends 2 or 3 minutes just before the film, and again, it makes you feel like you're in an event." Rather than you just sit there and the curtains open or the film just begins, and it just puts a little thing. Oh, it's the 4th day of the 23rd Wrocław New Horizons film festival. American festivals go a bit too far. Who wants to see a movie? Yay! We'll go. Who loves cinema? Whoa! Let's sing a song together. And you're like, whoa, steady now. I've been to American festivals. It's like being in a holiday camp, and they're so jolly. It's like, we're going to watch a documentary. What's it about? Oh, it's about the Holocaust. Yay! Not quite that bad, but
shark and Nazis.
Yeah, and they get a bit too carried away. But there is a middle ground between the American rah-rah and the sort of just not doing anything at all. Let's say, the more
golden point in the middle.
Exactly.
It's great.
The happy medium, as we call it.
Okay, so Neil, maybe at the end, the last question, because we are short on time, unfortunately.
Next film's coming up.
How it's to be Neil Young, considering you are travel so much. How do you handle, the whole logistics, and what's for you? What's for you in it? Because you are like that for the last how many years?
10 years full time. Before that, I did a different job until I was 40. I'm now 51. I worked in a completely different job, and I would go to occasional festivals. So 10 years ago, I thought, I'm 40 now. Maybe I can make a career just doing the film stuff. So to me, it's a great bonus. It's an incredibly lucky thing to be able to, after this, I'm going to Locarno, then Sarajevo, then a festival in the Czech Republic. So that's, I'm extraordinarily fortunate to be able to do that, to get those sorts of invitations. And it is a bit of a hassle, and it is a bit of which airport am I going to, and all that kind of thing. But these are very nice problems to have. So as I say, the fact that I'm paid to go to festivals, to work at festivals, to watch films, to go to cities which I would never normally get the chance to go to, is to me something to be very. And one day, I always say, if I get invited to some festival, I'll be like, that might be the last time I ever get invited to Guadalajara or South Korea. So I'll probably say yes if I can do it. So to me, it's one of those where one day the invitations might stop. So I'm kind of like, I'm always on. I'm still hungry. I'm still hungry to see good films. I'm still hungry to go to new places. But I'm also, I've been to so many places that it's like, oh, I haven't been to this place for a while. It'd be lovely to go back there. So this is my chance to come back to New Horizons after 7 years, because I was working for a festival in Serbia which clashed, so I couldn't come. So yeah, it is. It can be tricky. It can be tiring, but you know, a lot of people that I went to school with, they're 50 years old and they're digging ditches or working on roofs, and they're the ones that are tired at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we go to the festival bar, and if we're tired the next morning, it's because we've had too much to drink, not because we watched too many films. I would say.
Okay, I think that's
Thank you
a
very much.
nice touch
Conclusion.
at the finale.
Off we go to the next film.
Off we go.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Dziękuję
Neil.
bardzo. Thank you. And
Thanks.
see you at the cinema.
Simon, cheers. Okay, see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.